Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest-running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Bachelor Country.
In today's episode 290, we bring you the second half of our on-trail recordings from our recent K'gari Great Walk. We hope you enjoy. Before we get into today's episode, if you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the Support Us page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. This second series of recordings brings to a close our on-trail component for our K'gari Great Walk adventure. We continued very much on the same way that we did in the first episode, but surprisingly enough, the weather did change, which was unexpected on our behalf. It's day 4 on our K'gari Great Walk adventure, and it's 6:42, and we're pretty much packed and ready to go.
It's getting earlier and earlier.
We are. We had a small shower this morning, probably around about 5 o'clock, but it wasn't very heavy and it didn't last long, which was good. And we did have some showers on and off during the night. So the pattern seems to be early morning showers, late afternoon showers, and the occasional one here and there. So at the moment, the sky is pretty blue with the odd cloud covering. So it's not looking too bad at the moment. So hopefully a dry start to the morning.
Yeah, we had a reasonably early and good night. It was funny, we did kind of get everything ready for the shower between 5 and 6 p.m. last night. We thought that was a standard thing. It didn't happen. So it was a bit of an anticlimax, but we've been up to the toilet block this morning, and it's not such a long way, particularly when you have to go, but you will have to plan for it.
Yeah, it's sort of a short, steep uphill, then walk over. And I must admit, the second time I did it felt a lot shorter than it was the first time. Long night in bed last night. I think we'd gone to bed by sort of 4:30, 5 o'clock last night.
Waiting for the rain.
Waiting for the rain. And we just sort of slept on and off through the night. But yeah, it's... Today we're heading off to Valley of the Giants, which is roughly around about 16 kilometres. I never quite work it out as far as the distance is concerned because my GPS always says something slightly different. But yeah, I'm hoping it's not as bad as it was yesterday as far as ascents and descents. Yesterday, so far at least, was the hardest day physically.
Yeah, I think so. And we were sort of lulled into a false sense of security because it wasn't such a long distance, but definitely mostly uphill. The other thing that took us a bit of time was that we spent a lot of time taking the perfect photo of fungi. There was a bit to take along the way. And somehow, I don't know, but how Tim ended up with the remnants of a leech on his knee. We never saw the leech, but we certainly saw the impression it made on his knee. And the blood on his trousers. Yeah, there's a photo of that, so that's kind of an interesting one about leeches and, how mysterious they can be.
I felt like there was something on my knee and I thought I must stop and have a look next time, and then I'd forgotten all about it because when leeches latch onto you, they inject a bit of anaesthetic and they tend to dull the area so you don't know something's there. And it was only when I was sitting down when we got to camp last night, I thought, there's this big patch of blood on there. So I've either squashed it or it's just been bleeding after it dropped off.
Yeah,
But
all I saw was the blood, and I thought, oh my God, he's cut his leg open. No, there was this tiny little spot where the leech was.
All right, we will basically have our last minute toilet break and we'll head off. We've been going for around about an hour and 40 minutes, and normally we would have stopped a little while ago by now, but we're walking through some type of rainforest. Even though you can sort of look up and see a lot of sun, it's quite a bright sort of day with just a bit of cloud. It's quite dark in through here, quite wet, and as a result, a lot of leeches as well. You know, ticks for me as leeches are for Jill.
That's for sure. I'm a bit paranoid about the leeches, and just happened to have some spray. I don't normally have spray, but it says it repels leeches. So I've sprayed my shoes and sprayed Tim's shoes, and it's doing okay. But every little kind of weird itch you get, you think something's sucking off you.
Particularly after yesterday where I got that one on my knee, and as I said, there was a lot of blood.
I was just saying to Tim, I can't afford to lose that much blood.
One comment I'd make about the start of the track this morning, we got into camp last night and it really wasn't obvious which way we should go. We could have walked straight out of the campsite across the trail and that would have been quite fine. Or alternatively, what we did was we walked up to the toilet block, used the facilities, and then walked out towards the lookout, because really both routes were going to take you to the same location. And we did come across the cutover point from the trail near the campsite that took you up towards the lookout, but it looked like it was fairly well overgrown. So I think a majority of people who do this walk will start it from the trailhead signage near the toilet block. And as you said, you walk past the cutting sign, you go to the lookout, and then there's some signage towards Valley of the Giants, which is what we were looking for. But as prior to that, it was just a sign to Lake Wabi, and we're thinking, are we supposed to go to Lake Wabi? And no, we weren't. We opted not to.
There is the hiker sign and the arrow, so we just, fingers crossed, followed the arrow. We figured we were heading in the right direction, but yeah, until you get to that turn off for Valley of the Giants, you're not entirely sure. You think you're okay, but you're not entirely sure.
Okay, so we'll have another 30-second break because Jill doesn't like standing still, and we'll head off. It's 10:30. We've been travelling for about 3 hours and 25, and we've covered 9 kilometres, which is not too bad going. The first section was pretty flat through that rainforest area. This last section is pretty much undulating up and down hills, so that slowed us down a bit. And we just found a log that's going across the trail. It's a handy place to sit. All up, we've done about 52 kilometres of the trip so far. And given we've got 14 kilometres tomorrow and 6 kilometres the next day, that's going to put us to around about 81-ish sort of kilometres for the whole trip all up. And I think the website actually quotes 90 kilometres, but that's if you do all the optional extras. So we didn't walk down to Lake Wabi. We didn't do some of the lookouts here and there. So the option is there to do more if you want.
Yeah, so we've done pretty well today. More beautiful scenery, more trees, and yes, it is like walking through a green corridor. A bit drier at the moment than it was earlier today, so fingers crossed we've left the leeches behind, at least for now, but we might have a bit of a surprise towards the end of this hike. And I guess I think we've done pretty well speed-wise. I'm not sure what the humidity is, but the humidity is definitely slowing us down. It's quite getting to us, and, we're not used to... If you're a local, I'm guessing if you're a Queenslander, you'd be used to this humidity and walking in this level of humidity. We're not, and we really do notice it when we are in not just warmer environments, but the humidity more so.
No bird life where we are at the moment, although we have had... here we go. Something's just telling me I'm wrong. We have had a couple of small I don't know what they are. I'll have to have a look when I get back home. They're finch-looking birds, and the male's a coppery, bronzy sort of colour, and the female's pretty drab grey, but just not familiar enough with birds, so I'll have to see if we can find out what they are when we're finished. All right, we will finish our break and carry on. It's 11:53. We've just stopped for an early lunch at the top of the hill. We've got 5 kilometres left to go out of the 16-point-something kilometres we had for the day. And we just decided to have a lunch right at the top of the hill because it was a good seating spot. Pretty tired at the moment. I will reserve judgment, but I thought yesterday was the hardest day, so I'll see what happens over the next 5 kilometres, whether I change my mind and push it for this one.
Yeah, look, it's a really pleasant climb up, but it is quite steep. There are lots of switchbacks which, make it a little bit easier, but it also, I guess, in a way makes it longer. So, yeah, it is steep and we're feeling the tiredness at the moment.
Okay, we will finish our lunch and then keep on going. It's 3:44. We're here at Valley of the Giants campsite, and apparently about 2.6 kilometres further on in a different direction there's a collection of really big trees, but we're not about to walk back out to the road a couple of kilometres and then back out to where these trees are. We've been here for a couple of hours now. It wasn't too bad overall, so I think yesterday still rates as the hardest day, but I think today would be probably the second hardest day so far. So we got into the campsite, just had a wander around to try and find a flat site, and picked one, but it was a bit hard. It was a toss-up between which was the flattest, and we've been filtering water, getting the tent set up just in case it started raining. So at one point I thought, it's going to pour, so I threw everything into the bin, put the contents of the bag inside the tent, and it was fine, but I thought just in case. I picked up a second leech today, again on my right leg. So yesterday was the right knee, today was the right ankle. And I must admit, I was walking along the road thinking, it feels like something's biting me, as in an ant. And I brushed it, didn't feel anything, didn't see anything. And then I got to the campsite, and Jill was checking for leeches because she's paranoid about them. I thought I'll do the same. And here's this leech which has been sucking off me for a little while, just near the sock line. Wasn't totally full, so the one yesterday there was blood everywhere. Here there was a small amount of blood, but it obviously hadn't been attached for too long. So I flicked it off and realised I had another one on my hand that was crawling over it, which had only just gotten on there. So this is a day when the weather has been wet for a while. Expect to come across leeches. I had someone else tell me that before we started the trip. I think if it was dry conditions, it would probably be fine. But again, with the amount of rain we've had over the last month and the continual rain, leeches pretty much everywhere at this site. So we have dehydrated dinner, or rehydrated dinner rather. We're going to eat that, and we'll probably end up in the tent not past, long past 4 o'clock, not because we're tired, just because we're sick of escaping the leeches and the mosquitoes.
Yeah, so today's been a little bit of an experience around the leeches. There were some beautiful trees to stop and look at in awe, but the leeches had obviously been trained. They knew that people stopped there and they latched on as soon as you paused. So we kind of looked up and went, yeah, that's lovely, and moved on. And we've been, moving pretty regularly or pretty swiftly ever since. So I'm not a fan of leeches, and I'm very happy that Tim's getting them all. Not sure why that's the case.
I don't have hairy legs.
Yeah, all right, whatever. But I did mention the spray that I bought, which wasn't fantastic, but it does seem to repel the leeches, at least around the legs and the shoes. So that's half of the battle. There's a bird here that obviously likes the leeches, and I think we think it's a little kingfisher, but we'll have to double check that. But whenever they see one, they dive in and grab it and take it away, which I'm very happy about.
obviously used to hikers because as soon as we move stuff or kick over any leaves at all, it's in here, and it's sitting just above our head at the moment watching what's going on. And we watched it chase another one of the same species away, so obviously very territorial. But today wasn't a bad day. I mean, overall, from start to finish was 7 hours and 35 minutes, which for 16 point something kilometres wasn't too bad. It wasn't great, but wasn't too bad. We were moving fairly steadily, but I think it's just, again, we came across a couple of steep hills, particularly just before lunchtime, and that slowed us right down. But yeah, so tomorrow we've got 13 odd kilometres, and that will be our last night on the trail tomorrow night before a 6 odd kilometre walk out, which is a cruisy sort of day at that sort of distance. Okay, talk to you later. It's 6:57. We're here at Valley of the Giants campsite, and we've pretty much packed up, ready to go once we finish this recording. As per usual, 5 o'clock rain last night, but instead of being a heavy shower or a short shower, it rained pretty much on and off for 12 and a half hours, and the off was pretty minimal. You know, it was like stop for 10 seconds and start up again. So it was a pretty wet sort of night. So we've dragged all our stuff over to in front of the toilet, and we're putting all our gear together here.
It sounds like a terrible place to put your gear together, but it's certainly the driest spot. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
I think we actually went to bed around about 4 o'clock, 4:15.
Well, we went to the tent.
Yeah.
And then, like clockwork, the 5 o'clock shower happened. So, that worked out quite well because we'd had everything packed away. And, yeah, I guess, chatted for a bit, and then the rain continued and yeah.
Yeah, it was just a bit too much of a risk sitting outside on the table, even when it wasn't raining, because you'd see the leeches crawling across over to you. So I've now started today with my socks tucked over the top of my trousers, just to try and see if I can minimise them.
It looks very sad, Tim.
All right, so today we've got around about
13, just over 13 kilometres today.
So it's about 3 kilometres shorter than yesterday, which is good, but that doesn't account for the terrain. So that takes us into, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce this, Lake
Garamrigewa.
Yeah.
We'll get it right by the time we finish this.
And that's...
Garongara.
Yep, that's the one.
That's the one.
And that'll leave us around about 6 kilometres to do tomorrow, which is a cruisy sort of day into taxi, which will pick us up at 11 o'clock. Okay, talk to you later in the day. It's 9 o'clock on day 5. We've been going for about an hour and 50 minutes now. Very hard going in some sections. We had a couple of kilometres of reasonably level track, and we haven't had much elevation change all morning. But the first section really was just through rainforest. No rain, but we were getting wet with the plant material and managing to pick up a couple of leeches each, although we picked them in time before they attached themselves to us. Then the rainforest ended into an open forest. But looking at the trees, they've all been burnt at some point, and the regrowth is massive. So we're having to bush bash our way through what was or what is the path, but it's very heavily overgrown, so very slow going.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because we started to question ourselves and question whether or not we'd missed a sign, because there was a sign way back on the I guess closer to Valley of the Giants campsite that was a bit obscured by fallen trees and so on, and we thought, oh gee, have we done the same thing? And then we just trusted and kept going, and here we are at a point where the track meets a road, and there are arrows going across the road. So
M12.
Yeah, we're at M12, and I have to say we're going to have more of overgrown track because the track on the other side does look a little bit overgrown. Just on the M12, it's a meeting point, and there are a number of these around the island, and so as we've gone on, the numbers increased, and it's usually where the track crosses a road. So, I guess if things aren't going so well, there are opportunities. Having said that, there isn't any phone signal here, so it's more for pre-arranged pickups, I think. Otherwise, it'd have to be an emergency pickup. But we're going to continue on, and I think we're going to have more of the same.
It's 10:10. We've been going just on 3 hours, and we've got 5 kilometres left to go for the day. So we're making good time. Once we got out of all that undergrowth and regrowth from the fires, and now we're skidding our way around the valley, looking like we're heading to a small saddle to cross over into the next one. One thing that we noticed after the last recording, we had about probably a bit over a kilometre before we hit a sign, and all of a sudden the vegetation seemed to become a bit more coastal in appearance and feel. We're back into a rainforest of some sort now, but yeah, I think essentially over the rest of the 5 kilometres, and then tomorrow we're making our way downhill to Happy Valley, which is pretty much on the coastline. So we're not at huge altitude here, but we're essentially going to be making our way downwards overall.
Yeah, up until this point we really hadn't had the brimmed hats out, and when we came out of the scrub we had an area of very open shrubland and lots of banksias. Really nice walk through, but sun was out, and so we had to put the hats back on, or at least find them and put them on. Now we're back into the forest. Probably don't need them as much. It's very shady, and lots of fallen logs though, because that's, I guess, tiring us out a little bit climbing over the logs. But they've had a lot of weather, a lot of rain and a lot of big winds, so you'd have to expect that.
Okay, we'll finish having a rest and we'll head on. It's 12:30. We've just arrived at our last campsite for the Gari Great Walk, and that's Lake Garrawongera campsite. For me, this is probably slightly different than the other tent sites, and maybe I missed something, but usually there's a sign saying campsite 5 kilometres or 3 kilometres or 1.8 kilometres. This time there wasn't. We thought, geez, we must be getting close, and sure enough, we crossed the road at M13, I think it was, which was that, as Jill mentioned previously, it was a pickup point. Walked across the road, 50 metres up the hill, turn right, and we're starting to walk through all the campsites. It's looking like we will be the only ones here, unless somebody is starting from Happy Valley and coming in that way this afternoon. But yeah, there was no one with us, so I doubt there's anyone following behind us today, at least, anyway. After the last time we spoke, we were having morning tea. We got up, there was a tree fall across the trail. Jill went through the easy spot from her perspective, and I realised that she'd trodden over a python of some sort. Would have been 2 metres long, looked like a male, and also looked like it hadn't come long out of hibernation because it was a bit scrawny. But it had its head under the smallest bush in the world, and the rest of it was sunning. We did come across another snake in the distance later on, and again on the trail in full sun. Must have been sunning itself, saw us and shot off before we could get too close to work out what it was. With the python though, did not care. It was like, leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. Just quite happily there.
Well, I was a bit concerned about you, Tim, though, because you wanted to get the best photo ever, and I thought, no. One photo, walk away. But yeah, it just went on for a little bit too long for me. But yeah, it didn't seem too bothered by us, whereas the second one did dart away. But so we're at this, as Tim said, the campground for the hikers. We found a really nice little sunny spot with a picnic table, and we're just getting everything out and airing it and drying it and making sure that we're all good to go for tonight. I'm not sure if we'll get the 5 o'clock shower here, but we'll be ready.
difficult trip this morning, as we mentioned, because of all the overgrowth. And then we had a section where Jill said she wasn't enjoying it, but that was because she was having to worry about leeches. And I think I probably flicked off 4 leeches off my shoes, and Jill probably did the same amount at least off hers. And it seemed to be in the wet areas, wet shady areas, that's where they were. Once you got into the sun, it seemed to be fine. But yeah, I'm guessing it's the time of the year with all the rainfall, that's where they're out and about. And, give it another month or two when it's a bit drier, I'm sure the leeches won't be as much of an issue. Lovely forest though, lovely trees to walk through. As someone said to me before we started this walk, it's a green tunnel, very much so. The breaks and the differences tend to be when you come around the lakes and have the lake view, and there's something different there. But you're not getting clifftop views or ocean views like you would expect on a coastal walk. Although, again, we're walking to Happy Valley tomorrow, and it'll be interesting to see what that's like, whether we get views of the ocean as we start heading through there. I think the one thing I'm looking forward to tomorrow is I'm hoping we have no uphill ascent, given we've got to almost make it down to sea level between now and tomorrow by 11 o'clock when we're getting picked up. Okay, that's it. We'll talk to you this evening before we go to bed. It's just after 5 o'clock in the evening on day 5, and tomorrow is our last day. Usually by now we've had rain, so there's a bit of wind in the background, and it's still blue sky with some clouds, so maybe we won't get rain. Maybe we got it all last night, but we'll see what happens.
Well, we're in a very different place. We're at the hikers' campsite at Lake Garrawongara. It's a really nice campsite. There's lots of segregated areas for single tents and multiple tents. We chose one for 3 tents and a picnic table, so we thought that was a good deal. There's no one else here, so we've got the place to ourselves. There's a day car park nearby, but pretty much no one has visited since early afternoon. So, yeah, it's a nice spot. No leeches, that's a good thing. And we didn't get the 5 o'clock shower, at least not yet. So not quite sure. This is a whole new experience for us.
The other thing as well is dingoes. Now, we saw a dingo driving along the beach coming to Dili Village.
So we were driving along the beach, the dingo was.
No, that's right. And we saw one at the toilet at Lake Mackenzie, but that was it. We haven't seen any yet, so it'll be interesting to see if we see any tomorrow coming into Happy Valley. But I must admit we were expecting them everywhere and just haven't seen them so far. Although I did see a footprint today. But yeah, it's just surprising.
Yeah, there's lots of signage around. There's lots of guidance on how to be safe with when the dingoes are out and about. So clearly it's an issue. In large part, the public areas are very clean, and that obviously helps as well. So there's no sort of rubbish flying about and that the dingoes can get into or would be attracted to. And of course, probably the most common sign is don't feed the dingoes.
All right, so we'll see what tomorrow brings. So tomorrow we've got 6.6 kilometres to go to Happy Valley. We've got our taxi picking us up at 11 o'clock. So we're going to leave here, we'll try and leave here about 6:30, more just so we don't get stressed about getting there on time. It should be plenty of time to get there, but we don't want to sort of arrive at 11 o'clock on the dot and be stressed. So we'd rather get there and have a couple of hours early and have some food.
Yeah, Tim's already put his order in for the morning snack, so...
We'll see what happens and see how long it takes us to get there. So supposedly it's a 4.5 to 6 hour round trip, so both ways, from Lake Garrawonga to Happy Valley and back again. So even if that's true, worst case, it's 2 hours and 25 to get us there. And I'd rather take extra time just so we don't have to worry too much about it.
Yeah, we do have apparently a steep climb into another rainforest. Seriously, if I see another leech, that will be the end of me. It was described as quite a tough climb. So we'll see how we go. That might take up the space. And the other thing is, if the trail is overgrown, that slows us down. And also, there's lots of tree fall we've experienced on this trip so far. So all of those things add a little bit of time.
Okay, as I said, it's just after 5 o'clock, so it's time to go to bed. I'm sure we'll stay talking for a while, but yeah, as soon as it gets dark, and there's lots of mozzies outside, so in the tent it is. Good morning. It's 6:30 on day 6 of our journey on the Gari Great Walk up in Queensland. And we're just sitting down here at the picnic area adjacent to the toilet facilities, about to make our way off. As usual, fairly long night in the tent, so we talked a bit and basically ended up probably getting 6 hours sleep in about 12 hours, I think.
We talked a bit, then we slept a bit, then we talked a bit, then we slept a bit.
No rain last night, which was really good. That was different from every other night we've had.
That was a bit eerie.
We did have a short shower this morning, which is why we've come down here rather than recording up at the campsite. We thought if it stays in, we didn't want to be hanging around too much, but it stopped. So it looks like we can put the rain jackets away at least for the start of the walk.
Yeah, so it's looking like another lovely day. They turn out to be really nice days, mostly. The showers in the morning and the showers overnight tend to clear, depending on where you are. In the rainforest or in the Valley of the Giants was a little bit different. So looking forward to, we can see some blue sky and we can see the sun about to come up over the hills. So it's still quite light, but yeah, we haven't quite seen the sun yet.
And this will be the earliest start for us. And the reason being is we've got 6.6 kilometres to get to Happy Valley, which should be quite easy to do. Having our taxi pick up at 11 o'clock, so that'll give us 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 4.5 hours.
Tim's counting on his
Yeah, I am,
fingers
yeah.
here.
4.5 hours roughly, and that should give us plenty of time. We just don't know what the trail is going to be. Based on yesterday with the overgrowth and the steepness, I believe we've got one incline and then we're virtually making our way progressively downwards, one serious incline anyway. And I'm hoping that where we're going, top of the hills, is not huge anyway, so it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, so on the information board at the car park, I guess that's what you call it, the picnic area in the car park, there is a reference to a steep ascent. And, hopefully it's not as steep as what we've experienced, but still we're not taking any chances.
Last night we had some sort of animal nearby in one of the other campsites. I'm guessing a possum or something similar.
No humans.
No humans, no. So we were the only ones here, just like the night before.
And the night before.
Yeah, that's true. We have only seen the 2 dingoes so far, one on the beaches we were being driven along to the start of the walk, and one at the campsite at Lake Mackenzie. Nothing here so far, so we'll see what happens as we get down towards Happy Valley, whether we see any down that end of the world.
They do suggest that you carry a stick when you're walking, and you're walking in groups rather than solo. Given that I'm usually at the front, I've got my walking sticks out for the first day of this trip, and hopefully I won't have to use them to defend myself. But we're walking into kind of civilization now, which is, I think, probably where the dingoes tend to congregate, because that's where they can pick up easy food, they think.
All right, we'll pack up and we head off. It's 8:27 on day 6, and we're 1.7 kilometres from Happy Valley, according to the GPS. So we're on a downhill slope on what is called a fire trail, but it's a very overgrown fire trail. We're actually sitting on a fallen tree, and there was a big piece of erosion which no vehicle would get past. So needs some serious work if this is the fire trail.
Yeah, I guess that happens from here on in, from May onwards. So they'll probably do a clean-up of some of these key trails. I'm guessing that's a challenge for them year-round anyway, with the kind of temperatures, day temperatures and night temperatures, as well as the amount of water and rain they've had.
So this section started off, we walked around the edge of the lake, and it's actually not a bad little lake, very small beach. So Mackenzie's Beach certainly is the pick of the beaches on the lake, so Mackenzie's Lake. This beach at the last lake was quite tiny, but it seems to be visited by quite a lot of tourist operators. When we came in yesterday, there would have been 5 or 6 vehicles leaving the car park. Probably about 1 kilometre in, we had a fairly steep incline. It looks like it's going to be the steepest incline of the whole trip this morning. Then we just had a couple of uphills as well, but nowhere near as bad as that first one.
Yeah, and the steep incline was relatively short in the context of the whole sort of trip this morning, and also there were some really good switchbacks which made it a lot easier. So some of the inclines we'd done in the last few days, it was, pretty much straight up, which, you can see exactly where you're going, and that also means exactly how hard it's going to be. So that does your head in a little bit. But this one was quite pleasant. The rainforest was beautiful, lots of birdsong, and the occasional sort of wind through the trees, which was dropping droplets of water on us, which was quite nice and quite cooling.
One thing, once we hit the really high point after that first steep section, we could hear the ocean. We lost it a bit for a while and then came back again over the last sort of 15 minutes or so. And now when we get the right viewpoint, we can actually see the ocean as well. So we know we're getting there when we know that's our destination point.
So we know we're going east, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Stop at the ocean.
All right, we'll finish our break and head on. So we're back here at Kingfisher Bay, having finished our trip on the Gari Great Walk. We actually got into Happy Valley at just on 9 o'clock, and in all honesty, we probably could have skipped the morning tea and just come straight through, because on the way through, we actually saw our taxi driver drive past with an earlier pickup. And potentially they could have taken us, except they were going in different directions.
There's a small problem.
Small problem here, yeah. So we went to the general store, come petrol station, come cafe, and just sat outside under a covered shelter and had our Coke and our sausage rolls and our ice cream, and Jill had a coffee as well. And we then just sat there and waited for the taxi driver to arrive. And I must admit, I'd been thinking about, I shouldn't have bought this extra warm clothing because I didn't need it. And I needed it then because the weather did start to change and it got quite cold.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's just probably relative, and there was a big storm and temperature dropped quite suddenly. Not kind of the temperature drop that we're used to at home, but that relativity of, having been walking in T-shirts and then sitting and then it dropping, we really felt it in that moment.
So all up, good trip. It was an easy sort of walk in. There was only one really steep hill, which was identified on the information signage at Lake Jerrawongera. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then there was a couple of smaller hills as well.
Yeah, it was actually quite a nice walk down, and I think, as we said along the way, there was a little bit of overground vegetation on the fire control line, but nothing too onerous, and it was much easier than we were expecting. We were certainly planning for something that was going to take us a bit longer. It didn't, and that's good for everybody to know too.
Yeah, nothing worse. I'd rather be an hour and a half early than 25 minutes late and have the taxi driver wait, or not being able to wait because he's got a busy day.
And he does seem busy. And the other interesting thing that we've sort of discovered along the way is, for some reason, a lot of the males up here are called Wayne. I'm not sure why. So the taxi driver is Wayne. He's, good fun, works hard, gets you where you need to go. And yes, he's a Wayne.
So that's pretty much us for this trip for 2024. So we have in total 4 podcasts. So if you're listening to this, there's one further podcast to go, and that's the expectations versus reality about what we thought about the trip beforehand and what happened in eventuality. And between that and the write-up, which will be online by the time you're listening to this podcast, we'll hopefully make it a lot easier if you're planning to do this trip yourself.
Yeah, so we will spend a bit of time talking about the logistics. That's probably the trickiest bit. Once you're on the trail, it's fine. It all makes sense, but it's about getting here.
Okay, thanks for listening. Talk to you later. We hope you've enjoyed this second series of on-trail recordings for our K'gari Great Walk adventure. In next week's episode, episode 291, we'll bring you our episode where we discuss our pre-trip expectations and compare them to the reality of the trip itself. We'll also talk about information that will help to make your trip, if you choose to do it, that much easier. That's all for this week. Bye for now.
And bye from me.